All right, ladies and gents, so what I'm going to be doing in this lecture video is going through the parts of the axial skeleton that are not the skull. So in this, we're going to be looking at the bones of the vertebra. We're going to be looking at the bones in the rib, or looking at a rib, as well as the sternum. Okay, so what I want to start with is talking about the vertebra. Okay, so here I have representatives of kind of the major classes of vertebra. We've got cervical vertebra, we've got our thoracic / lumbar looking vertebra, and we have our sacrum. Okay, so just to remember the basic kind of big structure overall of the skeleton of the vertebra, right? You've got your vertebral column. Okay, so with your vertebral column, all right, you're going to have it grouped based on the type of cervical or type of vertebra that you have. The first being cervical, thoracic, lumbar, and sacral. Right, you can also throw in your coccyx here, again, because it's part of that kind of vertebral structure. So with cervical, remember there are 7 of those in the neck. Thoracic, you have 12. Again, what's unique about the thoracic is that they attach to ribs. Your lumbar, there are 5 of those. What's unique about those is that they are bigger with the body compared to the rest. All right, your sacral, which is fused. Okay, there are 5 vertebrae that fuse together to form one sacrum. So you only got 1 of those. Okay, and then your coccyx, which is generally made up of 4, but again, that number varies depending upon the individual. Again, this is also fused together. Okay, all right, so let's go through and just identify kind of the types again, how to orient ourselves on a typical thoracic vertebra, since that's the one that we're going to be emphasizing in our structure, and then go through the features of it. Right, so here we've got our first 2 vertebrae that I want you to be able to identify, and those are your atlas and axis. Okay, so looking at these, right, they're unique because these are the 2 that articulate with the skull that allow for you to do different kinds of motion. Okay, so talking about these, right, if you're looking at them anteriorly, you've got these, or from the superior side, you've got these 2 bumps right here that actually articulate with the occipital condyles in the skull. So this is what's going to allow you to do kind of that up and down motion, like nodding your head. If you look here on the second one, you can see how this atlas, this upper one, can rotate on this projection here on the side. Okay, that projection is called the dens, but what that does is allow us to do the rotational motion, or sorry, it says upside down, to do that rotational motion to go left or right. Okay, so this is allowing you to turn your head in that left and right direction. Okay, so occipital condyles allow us to move up and down to do the nodding motion, like yes, I understand, and the dens on this axis allows us to turn and rotate left and right. Okay, so just the basic features there. Okay, let's go ahead and start looking at a thoracic vertebra. Again, this is kind of our representative vertebra for the vertebral column, since it contains all of the major features that you're going to be asked to identify. So again, to orient yourself on the vertebra, what we're looking for is for this vertebral spine. Okay, the spines on the vertebra should be pointing inferiorly, right? They should be pointing downward. So the superior side will be the area opposite of that point. Okay, so in this case, this side is superior up here, and then our inferior side is down here where the point is. Okay, so let's start going through the different features. So looking at our vertebra, the first feature you can see is this giant hole that's right smack dab in the middle. Oops, wrong button. All right, so this hole right here represents the there we go. Represents the vertebral foramen. Okay, so here is where our spinal cord is going through. Again, it's vertebral foramen because it's going through the vertebra. Okay, if you look on the side here, we have these 2 processes that stick out on the left and right side. Right, so those are called your transverse processes. Again, the transverse processes, they're called transverse because they go along a transverse plane, right? They cut the body across. Okay, when we look here, we have the spinous process of the vertebra. Again, the spine is going to be pointing downward on our vertebra, okay, towards the, again, inferiorly. Right. As we move here, there are different features that make up this whole structure. So when we're talking about this portion here at the top where we've got the vertebral foramen, these 2 little projections of bone, right, and kind of this whole thing together, this top part, okay, or this part that's actually posterior, right, this posterior portion, again, because the spine is on the posterior side of the body, is what we call the vertebral arch, again, this whole structure here. And then the rest of this is the body. Okay, so again, the body is here, vertebral arch makes up the rest. If we're talking about parts of the vertebral arch, okay, so here we're looking at the posterior side, all right, you can see our transverse processes in our spine here in the middle, all right, this area here, right, between the transverse process and the spine, and this area here between the transverse process and the spine, we call those lamella, okay, they're just flat sheets of bone that connect this together on the top part, okay, so the lamella is here and here, okay. If we look underneath the lamella, right, you can see how the arch forming that vertebral foramen has sitting on these two kind of projections of bone sticking up, right? Kind of if you look at it from the side, it's going to be this projection here, right? This is called our pedestal. Okay, the pedestal, like pedestal that you set something on, right? It's allowing things to stand up. Okay, so you're able to see that. So the pedestals are sitting there and there. Okay. Other features that you guys are expected to know, again, the body being this large projection here that's on the anterior side of the vertebra. We have our intervertebral foramen. So to see that, what we have to do is actually articulate two vertebrae together, okay? So like here, for example, if our lumbar was articulating with our sacrum, right, we're forming an indentation or a hole right there that's going to be between two vertebrae. So our intervertebral foramen is between two vertebrae, okay? So when we're looking at our vertebra again, every vertebra is going to be articulated with another vertebra. Okay, so they're going to be one above, one below. Okay, so when we're looking at the one above, it's going to articulate with this surface right here. Okay, these two portions right here, and that is what we call the superior articular surface. Again, so these sides are going to actually articulate with the bone above. If we look on the same side as where our spine is pointing down, right, these two features right here, these 2 points that are sticking here and here, that is our inferior articular surface. Okay, as you look here, we also again have a vertebral arch, again opposite the body, again this portion of our vertebra with the body being down here. Okay, the other feature that's on here is the costal facet. So that's going to be an area where the ribs are actually going to be attaching. So on this guy, it's going to be kind of like right over here is where we're going to see them. And again, your rib is going to actually go in and fit into that area. We got the wrong side of the rib. Right, it's going to fit into that area and allow support here in that junction as we go then around the rest of the body towards the anterior side. The other features here is unique to the sacrum. So this whole bone right here represents the sacrum. With the sacrum, you've got this kind of pointed section with the crest here, or the spine of the sacrum being on the anterior or posterior side. The anterior side kind of being the inside of this curve. Okay. On it, you have the 5 vertebrae that are fused together that form these foramen. Okay, these foramen are technically intervertebral foramen, but we also call them sacral foramen, okay, because they are on the actual sacrum. And then for the sacrum, we break it up into 2 parts. So when we're going here to the superior side, this is what we call the base. And down here at the bottom, this is going to be the apex. Okay, the last thing that's on your list to know are these little bones here that are meant to just be broken, and those are the coccyx. Okay, so those are all the features on the vertebra. Real fast, I just want to point out again kind of the structure of a vertebra. So here I have a diagrammatic view. Okay, so looking at this diagrammatic view, here we have the posterior side again with the spine. Here's our transverse process. Okay, one on the left, one on the right. This right here represents the pedestal. This whole portion up here, this is our vertebral arch. Okay, and this whole part down here represents the body. Okay, and then here between our transverse process and our spine is where we're going to have the lamina. Okay, so again, those are kind of all the major features that you would expect to see on a vertebra. Again, kind of the areas that people get the most confused about. Again, pedestals are these feet that form the sides of this hole here, which is our vertebral canal, or also our vertebral foramen. That all of those come together to form the canal. All right. So those are the major features of our vertebra. Okay, let's look at our ribs. So here we have a general rib. Okay, on the rib, there are 2 features that you need to find, and those are the costal end. Okay, so this kind of flattened end that's actually touching what's actually going to articulate with costal cartilage. That's either going to then go directly to the sternum if it's a true rib, or connect with costal cartilage together to the sternum through a false rib. Or if this was one of the smaller ones, you would have the floating ribs, again, those that do not have costal cartilage. So on the ribs, right, if we go here to this posterior side, right, we have these 2 projections on the end. So this projection here is actually the head of the rib. Okay, below that in this space here, okay, between these 2 bumps, right, is known as the neck of the rib. And then this projection down here, which is actually what allows us some additional attachment to the vertebra, we call this the rib tubercle, or tubercle of the rib. Okay. As we move around the rib, we have the shaft, since this is forming technically a rounded long bone. And then we have the angle, because the rib itself, right, is bent, so it's going to be turned. So this area here where we have this movement, we call, or this like shift in from back to front, from posterior to anterior, we call that the angle of the rib. And then we also here have the shaft. So the shaft is the entire length between the head here and then the costal end there. Okay. All right, so that's our basics on a rib. The last thing that we need to identify on our list is the sternum. So what I have here is a model of a sternum. On it, you can see how it's attached to all of the different costal features. Okay, so here at the top part of the rib, so again, this is the anterior side that we're looking at here. This is superior. So on the superior end, we have the head, okay, or also known as the manubrium. You can call it either. Then we have here the body, okay, which is in the middle. And here at the most distal end, or sorry, at the most inferior end of this, you have the xiphoid process. Again, a small projection that's pointing out between the costal cartilage, which is attaching to all the parts of the rib here. All right. The last feature that's on here are these two little notches at the top. These two notches represent where the clavicle articulates with the sternum. So we call this the clavicular notch. Okay, so that's where our clavicle sits. Okay. All right. So that's the basic run through the bones of the appendicular skeleton, or sorry, the axial skeleton. So if you've got more questions, let me know.